And now, here's Mike Muse with the political news.
So let's get right to it and meet the candidates.
That completes the opening statements.
We're going to get right to it.
On Sway in the Morning.
All right. Mike Muse is here. We got a special guest that's joining us in the next break, Mark Byers, who was at the Criminal Justice Center for the Rally for Meek in Philadelphia. Someone who's worked in and around Meek, all around Philly. He's a pillar in the Philly music culture. His brothers and his whole family has been for years. We're going to talk with him momentarily. But I want to go to my home state of California. 4 people were killed and at least 10 were wounded in a series of shootings in Northern California. Could have been worse than that, according to police. They say a man possibly triggered by a dispute with a neighbor went to several different locations in Tehama County, and he fired on people at random. One of those locations was at an elementary school where the man, whose name has not yet been released, walked into the school grounds, fired through windows and walls with a rifle, but the school was on lockdown and the doors were locked. After 6 minutes, the gunman left. He was later killed by police.
Wow.
What can you tell us about this, Mike Muse?
You summed it up perfectly, Sway. What we don't know, we're still missing, is the identity of the suspect that was killed by the police officer, so we can do more of a deep dive into who he is, why did he do this, is there any evidence as he left on social media, vis-a-vis his email accounts, is there any evidence or note that he may have left at his home? So we're still trying to figure out who he was and was he connected to anyone or any other entity that was involved in it. But Sway, shout out to the teachers at the elementary school, because what they did was they heard the gunshots about a quarter mile away, and then that's when they rushed everyone inside and did an immediate lockdown of the school, which actually saved the students' lives. One was injured. We're praying that they pulled through, but everyone else was able to kept alive by the quick response of the elementary school. So shout out to that elementary school teacher and principal who did that. But Sway, we're just noticing just an increase in this gun violence in America.
Violence.
It's consistent, and they're becoming multiple shootings at one time. This one is 4. Previously, we've had 20s and the 50s. So, and within the last, 2 months, we've seen 3 shootings of mass shootings that have taken place. So that's where we are with that.
What is the country doing to eradicate these random shootings? We're not hearing nothing from the White House.
We're not. So the country is still in a debate on whether or not this is a mental issue, or if this should be stronger gun laws should be imposed and should be passed. The latest legislation that is being considered right now is from Senator Flake, who is in Nevada, who's Republican, who's introducing a bipartisan bill that will prohibit offenders of domestic abuse, to prohibit them from getting guns and access to guns. But outside of that, Sway, that is the only legislation that is coming forward. As you know, the Congress, they blocked the sale of the weaponry that will allow to turn and convert guns into machine guns. So they blocked that from going through. So the nation still needs to have a really tough conversation about guns and gun laws and how to limit the accessibility to guns.
Okay, what other conversations is the nation having right now?
We're talking about Roy Moore across the country. Roy Moore is one of the biggest subjects in political news at this time. So for the citizens who are made aware, we talked about this on Monday too. But there's more information that's come about since we talked about this. Roy Moore, as you guys know, who was running for Senate Republican in the state of Alabama to replace the open seat that is from now Attorney General Jeff Sessions. But Sway, on Monday, we had 4 women on record who came out in the Washington Post. One said that she was molested at the age of 14 by him. 3 others said there was sexual misconduct that occurred. But now a 5th accuser came forward yesterday by the name of Beverly Young Nelson, who also came on record and did a press conference and said that she was also had experienced sexual misconduct with Roy Moore, who is the district attorney at the time. District attorney at the time. I'm sorry about that. And more things have come out regarding that. She says she wants no money, Sway. She doesn't want to sue. She says she just wants to be made available if the Senate needs to do a special hearing, that she wants to be called as a witness under oath to go against this. We also are hearing, Sway, that Roy Moore actually signed her yearbook. He alleges that he doesn't know her, but the evidence suggests differently, that he signed her yearbook. Also, 2 evidence came out in the Alabama Times that he has now, at the time, was banned from the mall. This mall was one of the hot spots of the mall that was known where a lot of young people hung out at. The mall employees banned him for coming because of his harassment with young girls. And here's what Senator Mitch McConnell had to say about Roy Moore.
Roy Moore should step aside. The women who've come forward are entirely credible. He's obviously not fit to be in the United States Senate. And we've looked at all the options to try to prevent that from happening. Obviously, this close to the election, it's a very complicated matter. And I think once the president and his team get back, we'll have further discussions about it.
So as you heard with Senator Mitch McConnell, a lot of the Republicans are coming out and saying that Roy Moore is not fit to be in the Senate. And if he does get into the Senate, they will take further actions to do ethics hearing where he could then become expelled from that. But also it's interesting, Sway, what Senator McConnell is advocating for is for a write-in candidate. And the person he suggested that the state of Alabama considers is our current attorney, Jeff Sessions, who coincidentally, Sway, was on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Okay.
And so while he was on Capitol Hill, he was brought back up. As we talked about here on the show, the FBI, who is now the individual who's now helping the FBI by the name of George Papadopoulos, who was part of Trump's campaign Foreign Affairs Committee, has testified that he did have interaction with Russia and he was trying to bring together a meeting between the Trump campaign and Russia. Senator Attorney General now Jeff Sessions, who was Senator Jeff Sessions at the time, was present at the meeting. But during all this way, his confirmation hearings, when he came to Capitol Hill a couple weeks ago, he has always denied that he had any contact or knew of any surrogates who had contact with Russia. That turned out to be a lie, Sway. So they wanted to bring him back for further questionings regarding that, to which he did mention that he did have contact. Now he remembers the meeting that they had in Trump Towers. He now remembers George Papadopoulos, and he now remembers that George Papadopoulos offered to...
when they do this testimony, it's under oath, right?
Yes, it's under oath.
So you could lie under oath and not be punished, or just...
Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's hear what Congressman Hakeem Jeffries had to say at the hearing yesterday.
In your testimony today, you have stated, I don't recall, at least 20 times. Is that fair to say?
I have no idea.
And at that meeting, Carter Page told you that he was going to Moscow in a few days. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And he,
thank you.
He said it was a brief meeting as he was walking out the door. I don't recall that conversation, but I'm not able to dispute it.
Understood. Reclaiming my time, I've got limited time available.
That is not, does that establish some sort of improper contact?
I think you understand.
Russians?
I think you understand.
He's not Russian either. You know.
Understand, sir. I get to ask the questions. You provide the answers. In this capacity, you're no longer in the United States Senate.
So that was how the exchange went, not only between Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, but also, too, that was at the temperament of the entire hearing and entire session. So not only did Attorney General Jeff Sessions come clean that he now recalls George Papadopoulos, but he also, too, came clean that he also was aware now of Carter Page, which goes against his previous testimony where he said that he had no knowledge of any surrogates who had any contact. But now we're hearing Carter Page because Carter Page was on the Hill a couple of weeks ago stating that he did make contact with the Russians and that he also, too, did communicate that with the campaign, who would have been at the time Senator Jeff Sessions. What you hear, Sway, and that went to your question that you're asking, like, are they lying under oath? A lot of people wiggle their way out of it to give themselves some clearings by saying, I don't recall, or I don't remember.
Right.
But what Congressman Hakeem Jeffries was establishing is that over a certain amount of time, if you continuously say, I don't recall, you can then be held for perjuring yourself if you intentionally try and deny your memory. And so they're building a case, if you will, to provide evidence if that is the case. What the Republicans were interested in, Sway, though, was Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. She's now back in the news. As you recall, Congressman on the Hill wanted Secretary Clinton to be investigated for the Uranium-1 deal. President Trump issued a tweet stating that he wanted the Department of Justice to bring that up into the investigation. That came up in the hearing yesterday. So now we're talking about Uranium-1 over again. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said where it stands right now that he doesn't believe there is enough evidence to move forward with the special counsel to appoint the covering of that. So we're going to hear a lot more Republicans regarding that. And speaking of Republicans, we're going to hear a lot more of is the tax bill. So that's coming to play. Speaker Paul Ryan, who's a Republican, believes they're going to begin debating on that on the floor today.
Okay.
And hopes the bill will come up tomorrow. On the Senate side, though, they have a completely different plan, and so they're going to have to figure out how they want to reconcile those two bills. And as a result, they now want to the Senate tax bill wants to eliminate the mandatory individual mandate that individuals must pay into the insurance plan if they, and in particular, they have to pay a heavy tax if they do not participate currently in the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. It will save $338 billion in savings. They're hoping that will cover the corporate tax rate that they plan to reduce in regards to that. If this happens, 13 million people will have fewer insurance as they go throughout their health care.
Okay, Mike Muse, thank you. That's a lot of information.
Yeah.
In a short period of time. Great job. I didn't want to interrupt you. We were in the zone right there.
Cool.
You were like King Los freestyling. a lot of conversation has been made about Meek Mill and what people feel like his excessive sentencing for violating his parole. And there was a rally organized, Rally for Meek, in front of the Criminal Justice Center. Good friend of mine was there. He's from Philly. He's worked with Meek Mill along with a lot of other Philly artists. And I invited him to come up just to talk about the situation and why should we care. 888-742-3345. You have any questions about this rally and Meek? You can ask him anything. And if you don't agree with the rally, 888-742-3345.